Rain fell in thin, cold lines from the sky. It tapped softly on the black umbrellas around me and made the grass dark and shiny. The ground near the grave had turned to mud, and my shoes slowly sank into it. I did not move. I could not move. In front of me was my grandmother's coffin. The wooden box was being lowered into the earth, inch by inch. The ropes creaked as the men let it down. A dull sound came from the wet soil when it touched the bottom. That sound hurt more than anything. I kept staring. My hands were shaking, but I hid them behind my back so my parents would not notice. Grandma Margaret was gone. The priest was still talking, but I could not hear his words anymore. The rain, the wind, and the beating of my own heart were louder. My chest felt tight, like someone had tied a rope around it and pulled. I waited for my mother to cry. She didn't. She stood beside me, perfectly still, her face dry. She stared at the grave, but not really at it. Her eyes looked far away, like she was thinking about something else. Then I looked at my father. He was not looking at the coffin either. He kept checking his watch. Again, and again, and again. Who checks time while their own mother is being buried? A cold feeling slid into my stomach. Something was wrong. I glanced around at the people gathered there. Relatives, neighbors, a few people I didn't recognize. Then I noticed someone standing far away under a tree, beyond the umbrellas. A man. He wore a dark coat and hat. I could not see his face clearly because of the rain, but I knew one thing for certain. He was not here to mourn. He was watching us. For a moment, I thought I imagined it. But then he turned his head slowly, and I felt like he was looking straight at me. I quickly looked away. "Clara," I flinched. A soft voice spoke close to my ear. I turned and saw an elderly man standing beside me, tall, thin, with silver hair and sharp eyes behind round glasses. Mr. Leonard Hale, my grandmother's lawyer. I had seen him only a few times in my life. Grandma always spoke to him privately. Every time he visited, she would send everyone else out of the room. Now he looked pale, not sad, afraid. He leaned slightly closer to me so no one else could hear. "Miss, please come with me immediately." My heart skipped. "What?" I whispered. His hand trembled slightly as he held his umbrella. "You must not tell your parents, and do not tell your younger brother." My breath caught. "Why?" He swallowed. Then he whispered words that made the air feel colder than the rain. "You will be in danger." I stared at him, waiting for him to smile and say it was a mistake. He didn't. He looked toward my father. For the first time, I saw real fear in an adult's eyes. "We must leave now, right now." "But the funeral." "Your grandmother instructed me personally. If anything happened to her, I must take you away before your family leaves this place." My pulse began pounding loudly in my ears. This didn't make sense. Danger? From who? I looked at my parents. My father was talking to a relative, but his shoulders were tense. My mother still stared at the grave. The man under the tree was gone. I hadn't seen him walk away. I felt a chill crawl up my spine. "Okay," I whispered. Mr. Hale nodded once, quickly. We moved quietly toward the parking area. No one noticed us leaving. At least I thought no one noticed. Just as we reached the cars, I looked back. My father was watching me, not confused, not curious, angry. My stomach dropped. We drove in silence. Rain hit the car windows, making soft, ticking sounds. The wipers moved back and forth, back and forth. Mr. Hale gripped the steering wheel tightly. I finally spoke. "Please, tell me what's happening." He didn't answer. "Is this about Grandma?" Still silence. "Am I really in danger?" His jaw tightened. "Your grandmother loved you very much." "That doesn't answer my question." He took a slow breath. "There are things she discovered. Things she feared. She trusted only you." "Trusted me with what?" He shook his head. When we arrive, you will understand." That did not make me feel better. The drive felt long, even though it wasn't. Though every passing car made me nervous. I kept checking the rear window. Once I thought a dark car was following us, but then it turned at another road. Finally, we reached a quiet street. Mr. Hale's house stood alone at the end. Lights were on inside, but he suddenly slowed the car. He frowned. "That's strange," he muttered. "What?" He didn't answer. He parked quickly. The front door of the house was slightly open. My chest tightened. "You said you live alone," I whispered. He did not respond. We stepped out. The rain had stopped, but water dripped from the roof edges. The night was very quiet. Too quiet. Mr. Hale walked slowly toward the door, then stopped. "Clara, stay behind me." My heart pounded so loudly I thought I might faint. The door creaked as he pushed it open wider. Warm light spilled onto the porch. And then, someone stepped into the doorway. I looked up. My breath vanished. My knees almost gave way, because the person standing there was someone I had been told was dead years ago. I couldn't even speak. I just stared, frozen in shock. 3 weeks before the funeral, everything still felt normal. At least, I thought it was normal. Every Saturday after my classes, I visited my grandmother. I never told my parents how much I loved those visits. If I did, my father would say I was wasting time, and my mother would just nod quietly like always. Grandma Margaret lived alone in a small white house at the end of Maple Street. It had a wooden gate that always squeaked when I opened it. She said she never fixed it on purpose. "I like to hear when someone is coming," she once told me with a smile. Her garden was her pride. Aunt roses grew along the fence, and she had tiny stones arranged in perfect circles around each plant. She never let anyone step on the soil. That day I noticed something strange immediately. All the curtains were closed, every single one, even though it was afternoon and the sun was bright. I knocked. "Grandma, it's me." For a few seconds, nothing happened. Then I heard locks turning. 1 lock, 2 locks, 3 locks. The door opened only a small crack before her eyes appeared. When she saw me, her shoulders relaxed. "Oh, Clara, come inside quickly." Quickly, that word was new. I stepped inside and she shut the door fast, locking it again. "Grandma, why are you locking the door in the daytime?" She forced a small smile. "Safety is never a bad habit." But she wasn't acting like herself. Normally, she hugged me tightly and asked about my week. That day she walked to the window and slightly lifted the curtain, peeking outside. I followed her gaze. The street was empty. "Are you expecting someone?" I asked. "No." She dropped the curtain immediately. Then she turned to me and held my shoulders gently. Her hands were colder than usual. "Clara, sit. I made tea." We sat at the table, but she didn't drink hers. She kept listening, like she was waiting to hear something. "Grandma, you're scaring me." She looked at me for a long moment. Her eyes were serious, not soft like usual. "Do you trust me?" "Of course I do." She nodded slowly. "Good. Then you must listen carefully to me from now on." I blinked. "From now on?" She reached into her sweater pocket and pulled out a small folded cloth. Inside it was a tiny silver key, old and slightly worn. She placed it into my hand and closed my fingers around it. "Hide this." "What is it for?" "You must not tell anyone you have it." "Anyone?" Her voice dropped into a whisper. "Especially not your father." My heart skipped. "Grandma, why?" She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she stood and walked to the hallway, checking the back door before returning. Then she spoke softly. "One day you will need courage more than love." I had heard her say that before when I was younger, but now it sounded different, heavier. "Nothing is going to happen," I said, trying to smile. "You're worrying too much." She shook her head. "Clara, if anything happens to me—" I interrupted quickly. "Don't say that." She held my hand tighter. If anything happens to me, go to Mr. Hale, only him. Do not go to your parents first. I stared at her. That makes no sense. Why would I not go to my parents? Her face filled with sadness. Because sometimes the people closest to us are the ones we understand the least. I didn't know what to say. The kettle whistled loudly on the stove, making me jump. She turned it off, but her hands were shaking slightly. That was the first day I felt real fear. Over the next week, her behavior became stranger. She started calling me every evening. Not long calls, just quick ones. Are you home? Did anyone ask about me? Has your father said anything unusual? Every time I asked what she meant, she would change the topic. One evening, I visited again without warning. When I opened the gate, I saw her standing outside near the fence, staring down the road. Her face looked pale. Grandma? She quickly grabbed my arm and pulled me inside. Did anyone see you come here? What? No! She locked the door again. Grandma, please tell me what's happening. She hesitated, then finally spoke. I think someone is watching me. I laughed nervously. Watching you? Who would watch you? She didn't laugh. I don't know yet. Did you call the police? No. Why not? Her answer confused me. Because the danger may not be outside. My stomach tightened. That night, while I was washing the teacups, she suddenly turned off the kitchen light. The room went dark except for the hallway lamp. Grandma? She pointed toward the window. A car was parked across the street. The engine was off. No lights, just sitting there. We stood in silence for almost a minute. Then the car slowly drove away. She didn't sleep that night. I know because I stayed over and I heard her walking around the house again and again, checking locks, checking windows, whispering prayers. 3 days later, I received a call from my father. Clara, your grandmother passed away this morning. My ears rang. What? How? Heart failure. The doctor confirmed it. I couldn't breathe for a moment. Just 2 days ago, she was talking and walking. Was she alone? Yes. Something inside me twisted painfully. After we hung up, I realized something. Grandma never had heart problems. Never. That evening, we went to her house. My father arrived before us. When my mother and I entered, he was coming out of her study. Grandma's study was always locked. Always. Dad, why were you in there? I asked. He looked surprised for a split second, then calm again. Looking for documents. I'm handling her estate now. His answer was too quick. I noticed something else. The desk drawer was open, and the small wooden box she kept inside it was gone. I slowly touched my pocket. The tiny silver key was still there, and for the first time I understood something clearly. Grandma knew she was going to die, and she was afraid of something much closer than a stranger outside her house. I could not stop staring. The porch light behind the figure glowed softly, but my eyes had already adjusted to the darkness. I saw the face clearly. It was him. My hands turned cold and numb. My throat closed. For a moment, I forgot how to breathe. That's impossible, I whispered. The man standing at the door looked at me gently, almost sadly. He didn't look surprised to see me. It was like he had been waiting. Hello, Clara. My knees weakened. I grabbed the door frame to keep from falling. I knew that voice. I had heard it many times when I was little. I had heard it in old recordings my grandmother kept. I had heard it in stories told when I was a child. But I was also told something else. He died years ago. Mr. Hale stepped in front of me slightly, protective. You shouldn't have opened the door, he said to the man in a low voice. The man shook his head slowly. There was no more time. They are already moving faster than we expected. My heart pounded louder. Who is he? I asked, my voice shaking. Mr. Hale turned to me. His eyes were heavy with worry. Clara, please come inside first. You are not safe standing outside. I walked in on unsteady legs. The house smelled like old books and paper. A lamp was on in the living room, and files were spread across the table. The man closed the door and locked it carefully. I couldn't stop staring at him. He looked older than the photos I remembered, with faint lines on his face and tired eyes. But it was still the same person. I finally spoke. "They told me you died." He looked down briefly before answering. "I know." The room felt smaller. My thoughts were tangled. Then, who was buried? Neither of them answered immediately. Mr. Hale gently guided me to sit on the couch. "Clara," he said softly, "your grandmother knew this day might come. She prepared something for you." He walked to the table and picked up a sealed envelope. My name was written on it in my grandmother's handwriting. My chest tightened instantly. I recognized the careful curves of each letter. Is that from her?" He nodded and placed it into my hands. My fingers trembled as I opened it. Inside was a folded letter. I unfolded the paper slowly. "My dear Clara, if you are reading this, then I am no longer there to protect you directly. Do not panic. You were chosen because you notice truth even when others do not. You must trust Mr. Hale. You must not trust appearances. Someone close to you has lived a lie for many years. The key I gave you opens the place where the truth rests. Do not tell your father yet. You are stronger than you think." "Grandma," my eyes filled with tears, the paper blurred. "Lived a lie?" I whispered. I looked up at Mr. Hale. "What does this mean?" He hesitated before answering. "Your grandmother discovered something about your family, something she did not want revealed until you were old enough to understand." My heart beat faster. "About my father?" Mr. Hale did not answer directly. Instead, he placed something else on the table. A second envelope. This was hidden with the letter. She instructed me to give it to you only after you arrived safely. I opened it carefully. Inside was a small photograph. I stared at it. It showed a family picture taken many years ago. My father, my mother, my grandmother, and a child standing beside my father. But it wasn't me, and it wasn't my brother Noah. I looked closer. The child looked familiar. Too familiar. "Who is this?" I asked. The man who had opened the door spoke quietly behind me. "That," he said, "is where the truth begins." My hands shook harder. "I've never seen this child before." Mr. Hale sat across from me. "Because you were never meant to." A cold wave moved through me. "What are you saying?" He leaned forward slightly. "Clara, your grandmother believed someone in your family has been hiding an identity for years." My head spun. Identity? I looked again at the photo. The child's eyes. The shape of the face. Something about it bothered me deeply. Then a memory flashed in my mind. My brother Noah once said something strange when we were younger. I remembered it clearly. We were playing in the living room when he found an old album. He pointed to a picture and said, "Why does Dad have 2 kids before us?" At the time, my mother quickly took the album away and told him he was mistaken. I felt my breathing quicken. I turned to Mr. Hale. "My father, he never had another child." Mr. Hale's expression was serious. "That is what you were told." The man near the door added quietly, "Your grandmother spent years trying to protect someone." I stood up slowly. Protect from who? Neither of them answered right away. Instead, Mr. Hale reached into his coat pocket and took out a small metal object. He placed it into my palm. It fit perfectly. The silver key. My heart raced. "The key your grandmother gave you," he said softly, "does not open a box." I looked at him. "It opens a place." "What place?" His voice lowered. "A storage unit she rented under a false name. Inside are documents she hid from your family." My stomach twisted. "Documents about what?" Mr. Hale looked straight into my eyes. "About what truly happened many years ago, and why she believed your father was terrified of you learning the truth." My breath caught. Just then, a sudden loud knock slammed against the front door. All of us froze. Another knock, harder. Then we heard a familiar voice from outside, my father's voice. "Clara, I know you're in there." My heart nearly stopped. I looked at Mr. Hale in horror. He hadn't told anyone where we were. So how did my father find me? My blood turned cold the moment I heard his voice. "Clara, I know you're in there." The knock came again, louder this time. The wood of the door shook under the force. I could almost feel it in my chest. Mr. Hale quickly turned off the living room lamp. The house fell into dim light, only the hallway bulb glowing faintly. "Don't speak," he whispered. I could barely breathe. How did my father find me? I never called him. I never texted him. No one saw me leave the cemetery. At least I thought no one did. Another knock. "Clara," my father called again, calmer now, but somehow more frightening. "Open the door, we need to talk." I instinctively stepped back. The man standing near the wall, the man I was told had died, moved closer to the window and lifted the curtain slightly. He looked outside carefully, then lowered it. "He's alone," he said quietly. That didn't comfort me. My father being alone was worse, because it meant he wasn't worried. It meant he was sure. Mr. Hale leaned close to me. "Listen carefully. He cannot know what you've learned tonight." My hands trembled. "But he's my father." Mr. Hale's eyes softened, but his voice stayed firm. "Right now, Clara, you must stop thinking as a daughter and start thinking as someone your grandmother trusted with the truth." The knocking stopped. Silence. The quiet was heavier than the noise. Then we heard the doorknob move. It rattled slowly. He was trying it. I covered my mouth to stop a gasp. After a few seconds, the knob stopped moving. Then his voice came again, very controlled. "I spoke to the funeral staff. They said you left with Mr. Hale. I only want to make sure you're safe." Safe? The word made my stomach twist, because for the first time in my life, I wasn't sure he meant it. Mr. Hale motioned for me to follow him. We moved quietly into his study. The man followed behind us and closed the door gently. "Sit," Mr. Hale said softly. My legs felt weak, but I sat. He opened a drawer and removed a thin stack of papers tied with a string. The pages were old and slightly yellow. "These," he said, placing them on the desk, "are copies your grandmother gave me for protection. The originals are in the storage unit the key opens." My fingers felt heavy as I untied the string. The first paper was a newspaper article. I began reading. Local child reported missing. 17 years ago. A 5-year-old boy disappeared from a residential neighborhood late Sunday evening. Authorities reported no sign of forced entry and believe the child may have been taken by someone familiar to the family. My eyes moved down the page. Then I saw the photo. My breath stopped. It was the same child from the photograph in the envelope. My hands shook. I looked up slowly. "That's him," I whispered. Mr. Hale nodded. "Yes." I looked toward the man standing by the wall. He did not deny it. My head spun. "You were the missing child?" he answered quietly. "Yes." The room tilted slightly. I held the desk. "But then why would Grandma hide this?" Mr. Hale slid another paper toward me. A police report. I read the names listed. Then my vision blurred, because one name appeared again and again. Richard Whitmore. My father. "No," I whispered. The report stated he was the last adult known to have seen the child the night he vanished. My chest tightened painfully. "That doesn't mean he did anything," I said quickly. "It could just be coincidence." But even as I spoke, memories began returning. My father never allowed certain topics in the house. No old photos before a certain year. No talking about his childhood friends. No visiting certain relatives. I suddenly remembered something else. One night years ago, I woke up thirsty and went downstairs. I heard my parents arguing in the kitchen. I was too young to understand then, but now the words came back clearly. My mother had whispered, "You promised that was behind us." My father replied, "It is, as long as nobody finds out." My hands trembled harder. I looked at Mr. Hale. "What really happened?" He hesitated. Before he could answer, the front door slammed open. The sound echoed through the house. My heart jumped into my throat. We heard footsteps, slow, steady, coming inside. Mr. Hale's face drained of color. "I locked that door," he whispered. Another sound. Closer. A floorboard creaked in the hallway. My father's voice echoed through the house. "Clara, you shouldn't run from your family." My pulse pounded loudly in my ears. The man near the wall stepped forward, protective, placing himself slightly between me and the study door. My hands clenched the silver key tightly. The footsteps stopped outside the study. The doorknob slowly began to turn. No one moved. No one breathed. The handle lowered completely, and the study door started to open. The study door opened slowly. The hallway light stretched across the floor and touched my shoes first, then my hands, then my face. My father stood in the doorway. He wasn't angry. He wasn't shouting. That frightened me more than anything. He looked calm, too calm. His eyes went straight to me, not to Mr. Hale, not to the man standing near the desk. Only me. "Clara," he said softly, almost gently, "come home." My throat felt dry. I couldn't move. Mr. Hale stepped forward. "Richard, you cannot just enter my house." "I used the spare key your wife hides under the flower pot," my father replied calmly without even looking at him. "You should be more careful." Then his eyes shifted. He finally looked at the other man in the room. For the first time, the calm expression on my father's face cracked. Not fear, not surprise, recognition. They stared at each other for a silent moment. My father spoke first. "So you decided to show yourself?" The man answered quietly. "You knew I was alive." My heart pounded painfully. "You knew?" I whispered. My father looked back at me. "Yes." The word hit harder than a shout. My hands trembled. "Then why did everyone say he was dead?" He sighed slowly, like he was tired of hiding. "Because he was supposed to be gone from our lives." The man took one step forward. "You mean you wanted me gone?" My father's voice hardened slightly. "I protected my family." Mr. Hale shook his head. "No, Richard. Margaret protected this family. From you." Silence filled the room. I forced my voice out. "Tell me the truth. Now. No more secrets." For the first time in my life, my father looked unsure. He stared at the floor briefly, then at me again. 17 years ago, he began. I made a mistake that followed me every day since." The man beside the desk crossed his arms but said nothing. My father continued. "I had a son before you were born, Clara." The words rang in my ears. My chest tightened. "The boy in the photo is your older brother." I couldn't speak. I couldn't even think. My older brother. My mind refused to accept it. "But he disappeared," I whispered. My father nodded slowly. "Yes." "What happened to him?" My father closed his eyes briefly. "That night I took him with me during an argument with my wife at the time. I was angry, careless. We stopped at a roadside store. I left him in the car for just a moment." The man's jaw tightened. "When I came back," my father said, voice breaking slightly, "he was gone." The room was completely silent. I searched everywhere. Police searched. Everyone searched, but he was never found. I looked at the man standing only a few steps away. "You weren't kidnapped?" I asked him softly. He shook his head. "I wandered away from the car looking for my father. I got lost. A couple found me walking near the highway and took me to another town. There was confusion, no identification, and I grew up in foster care. I felt dizzy. Then Why didn't you come back?" His eyes softened. "I tried. Years later, I began searching. Eventually, Margaret found me first." I looked at Mr. Hale. He nodded. "Your grandmother never believed the disappearance was over. She hired private investigators for years. She found records, photographs, and finally him." I turned to my father. "You knew she found him?" He hesitated. "Yes." Anger rose inside me. "Then why pretend he was dead?" My father's voice became low. "Because by the time she found him, I had already built a new life, a new family. I was afraid the truth would destroy everything." The man stepped closer. "You weren't afraid for the family. You were afraid of blame." My father didn't deny it. He looked at me. "I thought keeping the past buried would protect you and Noah." My eyes filled with tears. "Grandma was afraid before she died," I said. "She gave me the key. She warned me about you." His expression changed quickly. "What key?" I held it up. His face lost color. "Where did you get that?" "Grandma gave it to me." He whispered. "She shouldn't have involved you." Mr. Hale spoke firmly. "She involved Clara because she discovered something else." My father slowly looked at him. "What do you mean?" "Mr." Hale placed the final paper on the desk, the one I had not read yet. I picked it up. It was a medical document, a birth certificate correction. I read it once, then again. My heart began pounding harder than ever. I looked at the man standing across from me, then back at my father, then back to the paper. My hands shook violently. This says..." My voice barely came out. I looked at the man. "You're not only my father's son." The room felt like it was spinning. "You're my twin." Silence crashed over everything. My father covered his face. Mr. Hale closed his eyes sadly. The man stood frozen. I couldn't breathe. "Grandma hid him," I whispered. "She separated us." Mr. Hale spoke gently. "Margaret feared your father's panic would lead to another terrible decision. She arranged protection quietly. When the boy was lost, she recognized fate had taken over, but she never stopped searching." My father's shoulders trembled. "I never knew. She never told me they were twins." Tears streamed down my face. All my life I felt like something was missing, and now I understood why. I looked at my brother, my real brother, standing only a few steps away. His eyes were wet, too. "I have a family," he said softly, almost like he couldn't believe it. My father slowly approached us, but stopped halfway. "I was wrong," he said. "I tried to control truth instead of facing it." For the first time, he looked smaller than I had ever seen him. I wiped my tears. "Grandma didn't choose me because I was favorite. She chose me because I was part of the truth." I stepped forward and stood between them. "No more lies," I said quietly. The past was no longer buried. And our family would never be the same again. For a long time, no one spoke. The room was quiet except for my uneven breathing. I could hear the clock in Mr. Hale's hallway ticking, each second loud and clear, as if time itself had stopped to watch us. I looked at the man, my brother. All my life I thought my family was small, my parents, my younger brother Noah, and me. Simple, complete. But it was never complete. Something inside me had always felt empty, though I never knew why. I thought it was because my father rarely smiled at me the way he smiled at Noah. I thought it was because my mother always hesitated before hugging me, like she was unsure. Now I understood. They had always been living with a memory, and I had always been living beside a missing piece. My brother, I still wasn't used to that word, stood across from me, unsure what to do with his hands. He looked at me carefully, almost afraid to step closer. "I don't even know your favorite color," he said quietly. The sentence broke something inside me. I gave a small, shaky laugh through my tears. "Blue," I said. "It's always been blue." He smiled slightly. Mine, too. I didn't even realize I was moving until I stood in front of him. For a second, we both hesitated, like strangers unsure of the rules. Then I hugged him. It wasn't a careful hug. It wasn't polite. It was tight and desperate, and he hugged me back just as tightly. I felt his shoulders shaking. I thought I didn't belong anywhere, he whispered. I spent years wondering why I never looked like anyone around me. I closed my eyes. You belonged here the whole time. Behind us, my father sank slowly into a chair. He looked older than he had that morning at the funeral, not just tired, relieved and broken at the same time. I stole years from you, he said softly. From both of you. Mr. Hale spoke gently. You didn't steal them intentionally, Richard, but you tried to hide from the truth instead of fixing it. My father nodded. I was afraid the police would blame me, that Clara and Noah would grow up ashamed of me. I turned toward him. I was already confused, I said quietly. I never felt you trusted me. Now I know why. He looked at me carefully. I kept distance because every time I looked at you, I remembered losing him. I didn't know how to live with that guilt. My anger slowly faded. Not gone, but softer. Because for the first time, he wasn't acting strong or controlling. Why, he was just a man who made a terrible mistake and spent years afraid of it. The next morning, we went to the storage unit. Mr. Hale insisted we all go together, me, my father, and my brother. My mother stayed home with Noah because we still didn't know how to explain everything yet. The unit was small and dusty. When I unlocked it with the silver key, the metal door rolled upward with a loud rattle. Inside were boxes, dozens of them. Grandma Margaret had spent years collecting the truth. Photographs, letters, investigator reports, adoption records, maps with handwritten notes, even drawings my brother made as a small child. She had never stopped searching. At the very back sat a wooden chest. I opened it slowly. Inside was a final envelope with my name. I unfolded the paper with trembling hands. My dear Clara, if you are reading this, then the truth has finally come to light. I did not keep secrets because I wished to hurt anyone. I kept them because I needed time to be certain and to keep you safe. Your father was never cruel. He was afraid. Fear makes good people make poor choices. I chose you because you listen, you observe, and you care about truth more than comfort. Families are not broken by mistakes. They are broken by silence. You must be the one who ends the silence. Bring them together. Forgive where you can, but never ignore truth. And when you visit my garden, plant new roses. Life must continue. Grandma, I wiped my tears. She never wanted revenge. She wanted healing. I looked at my father and my brother standing beside me. For the first time, they stood side by side. Telling Noah that evening was the hardest part. Noah sat on the couch, eye confused by everyone's serious faces. Why does everyone look like someone failed an exam? He asked. I sat beside him. Noah, we need to tell you something important. My brother stood near the doorway nervously. Noah looked at him. I saw him yesterday. I thought I was dreaming. I took a slow breath. You have another brother. Noah blinked, then blinked again. What? My father knelt in front of him and explained everything gently, the past, the mistake, the search, and the truth. Noah listened quietly. I expected shock. I expected anger. Instead, after a long silence, Noah stood and walked directly to my brother. He studied his face carefully. Then he said the simplest thing. You look like me. My brother laughed nervously. I was thinking the same thing. Noah smiled widely. Good. I always wanted an older brother. Clara bosses me too much. For the first time since the funeral, real laughter filled the house. My mother cried softly in relief. Visiting the grave. A week later, I returned to the cemetery alone. The sky was clear this time. No rain. I knelt beside Grandma Margaret's grave and placed fresh roses, blue and white ones. "I did it," I whispered. "You were right." The wind moved gently through the trees. For the first time, the place didn't feel heavy. It felt peaceful. "I was scared," I admitted, "but you trusted me anyway." I realized something important then. She didn't choose me because I was stronger. She chose me because she knew I would listen. And listening changed everything. I stood and looked at the sky. "Our family isn't perfect," I said softly, "but it's finally honest." Behind me, I heard footsteps. I turned. My father, my mother, Noah, and my brother were walking toward me together. Not separated, not distant, together. My father placed a hand gently on my shoulder. "Thank you," he said quietly. "For what?" "For being brave when I wasn't." I looked at all of them and smiled through tears. Grandma didn't leave me a fortune. She left me a responsibility. And because of that, the secret that nearly destroyed us became the truth that brought us back together. I touched the headstone once more. Then I walked back to my family. This time I didn't feel like a guest anymore. I felt like I finally belonged. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more interesting revenge stories.